Okay. Well, we want to be respectful of everyone's time. And we want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to learn more about the Lynn Walker Huntley Social Justice Fellowship. Just to let you guys know, my name is Fred Jones. I'm the Senior Director of Public Policy and Advocacy at the Southern Education Foundation. I'm joined by two of my colleagues. One is Mike Tafelski, the Senior Supervising Attorney at the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the current Lynn Walker Huntley Fellow, Harry Chiu, who is our current fellow under this program. So today, just in terms of how the flow of information will unfold is one, we're going to provide some brief remarks about our organization and the fellowship opportunity, the legal fellowship opportunity, which is really a partnership between the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Southern Education Foundation. And so you'll hear more about our respective roles and the opportunity that it provides the fellow, and then you also will learn more about our respective organizations and some of our core values. So with that, I would like us to get started. The second half of the conversation really will be fielding questions from the audience. So just wanted to make sure that literally, hopefully the majority of this webinar will be more of a conversation and allow you to submit your questions, either verbally say them or enter them in the chat. Throughout this conversation, feel free to use the chat as a function to communicate and ask us questions. And we have a team of people who may, if they can, we will try to respond in real time to you. So if we can get started with the first slide. So just so you all know, the Lynn Walker Huntley Fellowship is a fellowship that is hosted by the Southern Education Foundation in partnership with the Southern Poverty Law Center, who's been critical to our success. But I want to provide just a quick overview of the Southern Education Foundation. The Southern Education Foundation is the longest standing education equity organization in the country. We were founded just after 1867, just after the Civil War, to help the formerly enslaved population actually establish a school system throughout the South. We have a long history of helping, seed funding for HBCUs. We had W.E.B. Du Bois become our first research fellow. We've had several presidents and first ladies be a part of our board. And we actually hosted a team of researchers during the 1950s and 60s that fielded, that conducted research that was provided to the lawyers in the Brown versus Board of Education case. Today, we really have three pillars of our work. We have an early childhood. We have a research and data in terms of our strategic areas. We have research and data, public policy and advocacy, leadership development, and strategic initiative. We are birth through 16 organizations. So we focus on early childhood education, K-12, and post-secondary, and our work spans across 17 states in the Southern region. Next slide, please. And our top policy, public policy priorities include advancing early childhood education, K-12 resource equity, trying to limit the privatization of public schools, ensure whole child support, and we are squarely focused on racial equity and just policies throughout the birth through 16 continuum. And then the next slide. And so two issues I just want to highlight to make sure you all know there's two critical issues the fellow will work on from an advocacy perspective. One will be the classroom censorship. So trying to make sure states don't limit how race is discussed in the classroom. Here currently is a map, at least earlier in the year, that was updated on the progress that some states have been making to limit the ways race can be discussed in the classroom. So from an advocacy perspective, we try to push back and make sure that classrooms have the full flexibility to talk about race and other potentially controversial topics in a way that's actually conducive and safe for students. And then the next slide, please. And the other core issue is we are a pro public school organization, so we try to limit the way in which schools can use public funds to attend private schools. And so we try to ensure that we are trying to make public schools as effective as possible and funded at the highest level as possible, which means limiting the way in which public funds can be diverted to private schools. So right now, our fellow Harry now works to help limit the way vouchers are developed and or created, and we see this as a cornerstone element going forward. So just wanted to note these are some cornerstones to the fellowship. And then the next slide. And so throughout the year, here are just some potential opportunities that the fellow gets to have. In our partnership with the Southern Poverty Law Center, we meaning SEF, provide an opportunity for the fellow to have some advocacy opportunities. So we talk to state lawmakers, we talk to congressional staffers, trying to advance our public policy priorities. And so here are some instances in which we are working with state legislators, and also ways in which we sometimes are able to talk with some staffers at the congressional level as well. There's also opportunities for the fellow to really dive in and do some public forums, which Harry will speak to later, and actually really get some real life case experiences as well. And go to the next slide. Yes, and here are just some more photos from our work hosting some Hill Days, and also connecting with some lawmakers such as the senator who was on the right with Harry right here. At this point in time, I am going to kick it over to my colleague, Mike Tafelski, again, who is the senior supervising attorney at the Southern Poverty Law Center. So he can give you some more background on SPLC, the opportunity the fellow will have there. And also, one thing that I failed to mention is the reason why we are presenting today, specifically Mike and I, we represent the people the fellow would report to at our respective organizations. So right now, Harry reports to me from the SCF side, and also Harry reports to Mike on the SPLC side. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks so much, Fred, and thank you all for joining and everyone's interest in the fellowship. It's really been a privilege to be able to work with Fred and Harry and the whole team at SEF on this fellowship. We're proud supporters, and it's been tremendous for our clients and the work that we're doing to be able to work with SEF, and also to have Harry working alongside our team on the many cases and campaigns that we've got going. This fellowship is really a unique experience because of the sort of dual organizations involved too, and it really gives the fellow not only unique experiences with both organizations, but also in the advocacy strategies that are available through the different organizations. And we share, missions and goals between the two organizations that really allow for a cohesive working relationship between them. For those who may not be familiar with the SPLC, we are a civil rights organization based in the South. We are working for racial justice alongside communities and our allies and our clients. And we have a pretty large staff with over 400 folks. And we have different departments who try to work in collaboration with our community partners. And we really try to model an integrated advocacy strategy, meaning that we recognize that filing lawsuits is not the way necessarily in a vacuum to achieve systemic change, or to achieve racial justice or economic justice in our communities. It really takes a collective number of strategies that are necessary in doing that work, led by our clients, led by our communities that we work alongside to achieve those goals. And that's really the sort of community-centered nature towards the work that we are taking. We have offices in Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and Washington, D.C. And we have the bulk of our staff is based out of those states, although we do have some staff who are remote throughout the country. within the SPLC, we have a legal department that consists of 6 litigation and advocacy teams. I'm a member of the team that is focused on education and children and families. So this fellow works in conjunction with that team, and that's why I'm also part of the supervisory structure for the fellow. As far as my background, I've been practicing for 16 years. I grew up in Ohio. My parents were civil rights advocates, so I sort of always knew that I wanted to be an advocate for racial and economic justice, which led me to the South after law school in Ohio. And I've been practicing here in Georgia and Alabama for the last 16 years. With SPLC, I've been here about 5 years, and before that, I worked as an attorney with Georgia Legal Services Program, working in rural parts of Georgia to provide free civil legal services to families. And through that work is really where I honed a love for education, civil rights work, just seeing it as sort of a core piece of achieving the goals that I wanted for my clients and that my clients wanted. And so it's really been a privilege to get to learn from SEF and work alongside their fantastic team in that advocacy. The supervisory approach that I take for the fellowship, and Harry can share more on my approach, but is to really be supportive and really give folks the trusted space that they need to learn as a new lawyer, and that means being comfortable, like trying new things, taking on new strategies, thinking creatively, and also making mistakes, as we all do. So I think that the environment that we really try to create, especially for new lawyers, is that sort of safe environment where folks can really hone their skills, but also know that they have lawyers who have experience, who will support them and help guide them through what can be very daunting, especially when you're first starting out in practice. So that's kind of the supervisory structure that we try to create for Harry, but also for all the attorneys on our team. I've been supervising attorneys for more than a decade, and it's really probably what I enjoy the most about the work is sort of being able to support other attorneys in their growth and development, but also, that was a product of just me having great mentors and supervisors throughout my career, but particularly when I started practicing, and just I recognize how critically important it is to have strong mentors in the practice of law. And so I really have enjoyed working with Harry throughout this fellowship, and looking forward to working with whoever that next fellow may be as well. I just want to share too, like the significant contributions that Harry has made to our work. He's been able to work on developing new litigation that we've brought. He's been able to work on appeals. He's been able to work on investigations. He's been able to participate sort of in the broader work of our legal department and have access to the resources and staff on our team, which I think is really important, that he gets exposed to a lot of different lawyers too, and be able to work with other styles, and as you're sort of building out your own identity as a new lawyer, I think that exposure is really important. So Harry's been able to work with a lot of lawyers on our team at varying levels of experience, with varying, different degrees of expertise on different areas too, as well as work with our other national partners and co-counsel who we work with on various cases and campaigns. So I think he's had, from that perspective, really a great experience in this first year, and continues to grow on those skills that he's developed this first year into his second year of his fellowship too. So, and the litigation is only one piece of it, as Harry can share more on, as we take on that integrated advocacy model, there's the policy side, there's the community engagement side, there's the community mobilization piece of it, there's the coalition work, there's just so many aspects to the fellowship and the work that we do, which I think creates new opportunities and experiences for the fellow to grow. So I may be at my time, but I'm looking forward to the Q&A and sharing more about the fellowship, answering any questions that you may have. And that, I think, do I hand it off to you, Harry? Yeah, or back to Fred?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I'll say before you jump in, again, Mike and SPLC have been tremendous partners in this fellowship. I mean, the fellow spends about 50% of their time in each organization. As Mike was mentioning, though the fellow would report to Mike, they would also have access to a number of different partners or a number of different lawyers and employees at the Southern Property Law Center. One thing to also note is, though we have this integrated approach for this fellowship, our organizations work in many different capacities together. So we do research together, we advocate together, and still this fellow is brought in different parts and different places as well. So there's just a lot of room for partnership and integration. There's a lot of room for us to do advocacy together or take the learnings from what may happen in silos and apply them to the other organization as well, which has also happened as it relates to advocacy, coalition building, but also just collateral and knowledge and osmosis as you gain throughout this process. Harry, I think you are likely the biggest advocate and probably the person that can connect with the most with those on this call. Would love for you to give your take on the experience thus far after 1 year, and talk about some of the highlights that you've had thus far.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, I mean, just let me say just off the bat that as someone who used to be a teacher myself and who's incredibly passionate about education and ensuring that students receive the experiences that they deserve, this fellowship's really been an incredible opportunity. My first year has been really exciting. And since Fred and Mike have already given you an overview of sort of the structure of the fellowship and their mentorship styles, I'll use my time to give y'all more of an insider's perspective. As someone who isn't that far removed, I feel like, from where y'all are, this is my first year on the job, exactly 1 year, actually, I'm pretty sure, on the day. So I'll speak to what it's meant to me to be able to do this work. In the 1 year that I've been here, I've already sort of gotten to build my skill set in a really diverse set of advocacy experiences. Building our censorship challenge in Georgia from the ground up, as Mike referenced earlier, speaking to over 250 members of a historically Black church with connections to the civil rights movement in rural Georgia, direct advocacy and meetings with state legislators, U.S. congressional staffers on important questions of education policy, and now the fruit of 11 months work, finally, almost, with this case that we have where we're representing a teacher, the first lawsuit representing a teacher who's fired on censorship grounds in the region. It's just not most things new lawyers get to do, and I feel like I have some context to say this as someone with lots of friends who are also first year public interest attorneys. I'm just gonna talk about some of the highlights from the past year in a little bit more detail. This past legislative session, the Southern Education Foundation and me as part of that, it was part of a coalition that defeated legislation expanding school vouchers in Georgia by a 5-vote margin. And I wrote advocacy 1-pagers. I met with legislators to talk about the harms of sending funds to private schools. But I want to emphasize just how difficult this really was and how big it's really difficult to overstate how big of an achievement I think this was, when basically every proposed school voucher in the South and in many other places across the country was passed. You know, West Virginia, Arizona, Florida, Kentucky, we can sort of go on. When Governor Kemp was out on that very last night of session, whipping votes on the floor, and we won by a 5-vote margin, turning 16 Republicans to our column. And I think in the end, you know, it came down to being really clear-eyed about what Republicans care about. You know, they might not care as much as you and I do about LGBTQ students and segregation and income, but they do care about how their schools, their public schools, are frequently the main source of employment, the main source of vitality in their districts. And so those are some of the things that we focused on, and the approach we take to advocacy in general in the South. Another really, really exciting case that on the legal end of things that we're part of, I've referenced this, we've all referenced this several times. I'm part of the legal team representing Katie Rinderly, which is an incredibly exciting case from a legal perspective, from an impact perspective. It's one of the first cases challenging classroom censorship and anti-gay censorship, anti-queer censorship, I should say, in the region. The first teacher fired on censorship grounds in Georgia. And just being part of that journey from the very beginning. I remember meeting Katie on a Zoom call in March, you know, one of dozens of plaintiffs that I've talked to, and or potential plaintiffs I've talked to and interviewed over the months. And then, you know, watching her go through that trumped up disciplinary process for reading a book about, you know, there was a character that's non-binary in this picture book. And then the administration hearings where, you know, anti-queer and transphobic hate was used to defend the vaguest of school policies. And being a core member of SPLC's legal team the entire time, one of the main, at the risk of immodesty, one of the main people, you know, helping to come up with our legal theories, our next steps, thinking about what challenges are most likely to succeed in our region, in the 11th Circuit. Again, not something I think a lot of places can offer. This combination of really exciting impact litigation cases and this connection, this deep connection to state advocacy, state legislators, congressional staffers, officials from the Department of Justice, from Department of Education. It's just been a thrill. And, you know, litigation, as Mike was referencing earlier, I hope I'm still okay on time here, but I'll wrap up in short order. As Mike was referencing earlier, you know, this is all part of our integrated advocacy strategy as well, right? Katie has been on at least 2 nationally televised MSNBC interviews. She has all of the communications department at SPLC and SEF behind her. She's been featured in the Washington Post. She's written an op-ed, and all of that work, the communications, the grassroots piece, the coalitions that SEF serves on, working with student-led organizations in Georgia, all of that work informs each other. And, you know, I know community lawyering, integrated advocacy, these are terms that we love to throw around and we talk a lot about, but they're reality with this fellowship. So I'm just going to close by saying, if you want to become a civil rights lawyer because you want to make a difference, come to the South. There's nowhere where you can do more good for children and communities that really need it, who are facing the largest resource disparities and in many cases outright discrimination from the elected officials who are meant to serve them. And, you know, as W.E.B. Du Bois once said, so goes the South, so goes the nation. Attacks on truth, on democracy, on public education, they might start here, but they never end here. that's why I feel passionate about the work. That's why I feel like all of you should apply, and I hope you do. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Harry. I hope you guys can see why we ended up selecting Harry to participate as the inaugural fellow. He's been outstanding at both organizations, and we really appreciate and thank him for all this hard work and dedication in just this 1 year alone. I do want to add just two more things before we do go over to Q&A pretty soon. I'll be remiss to say this is the first, this is a 2-year fellowship, and Harry represents our inaugural fellow. But this fellowship is named after Lynn Walker Huntley, who was a prominent civil rights attorney for decades. And she's also the former CEO and president of the Southern Education Foundation. And unfortunately, a few years ago, she passed away. And in honor of her legacy and commitment to civil rights and education and equity, we created this fellowship to help the new lawyers and new education advocates get the training to hopefully make a similar impact in the way that Lynn Walker Huntley was able to do. And so I just wanted to mention that, just to let folks know the origins of how this fellowship came about, and its connection to both SEF, civil rights, just the civil rights community, and her commitment to the South. With that being said, I wanted to, at this point, probably just ask one question of my colleagues before we open it up to questions from you all. If you could just quickly say, maybe 30 seconds or less, what you think is unique about this opportunity, this Lynn Walker Huntley Fellowship. Mike, can you maybe answer first for us?
I think that being able to work with two organizations like this and get to not only sort of experiences with the work of those two organizations, but also the different strategies that come into play through that work, you know, both on the litigation side, but then also on the policy side, whether that be local or state or federal. You know, you just can't find another experience like that also, I think, helps you recognize how connected those pieces are when we think about advocacy as a really holistic tool. And so I think that is what makes this fellowship unique, and you know, being able to contribute that way. I know as a litigator who early on in my career, because of restrictions under federal law, legal aid attorneys can't do any sort of policy advocacy or organizing. So you're really sort of limited in what tools you have that you can use on behalf of your clients. And I think being able to step outside of that and work with organizations that don't have those restrictions or limitations can really open up the advocacy in a whole new way that I think allows us to achieve goals that we're seeking on behalf of our clients in different ways. So, yeah.
Harry, do you want to chime in here?
Sure. I'll just expand on my integrated advocacy point, and again, reiterating what Mike said, right? And I'll keep on with my example of the censorship case, right? Like with Katie, we are on one end, the forefront of, frankly, a very new cutting edge legal issue in terms of looking at censorship in public K-12 schools. At the same time, we're working with communications. We're using strategic communications to talk to people in ways that actually change hearts and minds. But not only that, because I think we haven't emphasized this point as much, but SEF has, as the oldest education justice organization in the country, has the name recognition and the authority as an expert on education in the South. And that means that the people that we get to advocate with are real movers and shakers in state policy. So when it comes to this Katie Rinderly case, you know, that there was actually a picture picture of me and the senator and our teammate, you know, Senator Sonia Halpern serves on the education committee, and we were able to speak about the prospect of another Don't Say Gay, Don't Say Trans bill coming back up again, and talking about how that interacts with Katie's case, how that affects all of our strategic decision making when it comes to our advocacy strategies, what makes the most sense. So yeah, I think it really is that integrated advocacy piece where you get to bring policy, grassroots organizing, litigation all together, and yeah, and make it into actual practice.
Now I'll take the point of privilege to give my perspective very quickly. This is an opportunity where an individual has the opportunity to do real work. And what I mean by real work is influential, impactful, and meaningful work for students of color and low-income students in the South. If that is something you are interested in, and that the advocacy or from a legal perspective, or really both, if you're interested in that, then I would really encourage you to apply. We have a very rigorous process. We're looking for someone to continue to elevate this fellowship, but this is a great opportunity to get mentorship and networks with multiple people from multiple organizations and really do meaningful employment field work. Like, this is a real job that you will have, and you'll get the guidance from folks at both organizations to hopefully successfully execute that. I do want to open up to any remaining questions, but I just have a couple slides to show you about sort of the application process so people understand what to do next and who's eligible. We're hoping to find someone to start next September and have that fellowship years from September 2024 to August 2026. It's open to 3Ls and law school graduates who earned their JG in 2022 or 2023, must have a GPA of 3.2 or higher. You must pass a bar in one of SCF 17 states, which are included below. And this is a position that's based in Atlanta, Georgia, and you'll earn an annual salary and have full benefits at $90K a year. And if we go to the next slide. And candidates who are interested in submitting their application, here's some essays and links to those. We also will include that in the chat if it's not there already, what the supporting documentation will be. And we are hoping really to notify those who are finalists in early November and then make an offer to the next fellow by the end of November of this year. So in a couple months. So just want to let you guys understand that the application process or the application are open now and will need to be completed by October 1st. And with that, we can open it up to questions. I would say if you have a logistical question, maybe some of the items that are just more administrative, feel free to include that in the chat. But if you have more, I don't know, substantive related questions or things that are more nuanced, feel free to hit the raise the hand feature in the Zoom, and we will try to field as many questions as possible. All right, the first one I see is Ken. Feel free to come off mute and ask your question.
Hi, I wanted to say thank you so much for providing all this information and like talking about what sort of role the fellowship will entail. I was wondering what sort of previous experience previous professional experience, I guess, would really allow the next fellow to succeed in their role.
Good question. There's not a required, I would say, set of experiences, but obviously, if you've done any advocacy at any level, that would be helpful. If you have any sort of any fellowships, internships, jobs in the social sector, I think would be helpful. But really, we do want to make sure people, at least from a mission and value standpoint, are aligned to SEF and SPLC's mission and value, because it's pretty unique and focus a lot on racial equity and social justice. So I don't want to confine it to just what set of experiences, but I think the mission and values have to be aligned, I think, to be successful in this role. Mike or Harry, feel free to add your perspectives as well.
Go ahead, Harry.
Okay. I mean, like Fred said, right? It's not confined, but I certainly think, you know, experience in the education law space is very helpful. I think experience in the racial justice space is very helpful. That can be internships, but that can also be, I know, you know, there are many law student organizations, volunteering opportunities, clinics. I think clinics are a really big part of demonstrating that you have practical experience and knowledge with the issues that we deal with. But I'd also want to add that personal experience, I think, matters too, right? I think, you know, if you have a personal story connected to the issues that we're focused on, we'd love to hear about it, and you have the opportunity to tell us about it in the essays the 2 essays that we asked you to write for the application.
Yeah, I was going to echo that. Lived experience, I think, is really, you know, an important piece of this. And, you know, we've all been impacted by systems in different ways. And I think, you know, sharing those unique experiences contributes to, you know, how we see ourselves in the advocacy space too. So I think that's really an important piece. I also think that, you know, having initiative is sort of where I see like a critical piece of this work. If you want to do public interest work, if you want to do civil rights work, you know, I feel like having been around this for a while, I think what contributes to success and what contributes to, you know, finding sort of your place is really that initiative you take, and these jobs become what you make them. And I think that folks who really have a passion for this work, who care about it, whether that be through their lived experiences or for other reasons, you know, I think those folks really have that drive, that that initiative, I think, that really makes for a really great experience for you as well. And I think is going to be what takes you to the work that you really want to do. And so so that would be something too, is just having like that drive and that motivation to do this work, I think is going to make it a really positive experience for you. And I think that has shown for Harry, like his passion for this work comes through, like the way he talks about it, the way he works, you know, like all of that. And he's been an exceptional fellow. And I think that piece of it, his passion, his interest, his initiative is one of the many characteristics that's made him so successful in the fellowship.
Great, thank you. Are there more questions? I thought I saw some other hands. I think I saw Grace's hand initially. So Grace, feel free to come off from mute and ask your question.
All right, hi, I'll come off not camera too, so you can see my face and I'm a real person. First, like, thank you all so much for hosting this info session. Like, it was super informative and really exciting. And I guess a question I have for Harry or for anyone is how do you factor in your own identity and your own positionality in doing work in the South? Because like this past summer, I interned with SPLC, which was awesome, but I realized that kind of as an Asian American, I don't really fit in that Black or white dichotomy. So it's like interesting to try to like build relationships with clients or like figure out my role, when to step up, when to step back, and all of that. So sorry, that was a long question.
It's not a long question. It's a great one. It's a hard one. I want to acknowledge that I think we've probably had quite similar experiences. And I think from a baseline perspective, I think well, one way I'll answer the question is that my team at SCF has been very helpful for me in that regard. I'm not Asian American at all. I'm Canadian. I went to law school in Boston and then I moved to Atlanta. I'm from Vancouver. I've never lived in the South. So, talk about positionality. But my team here, I work with a policy analyst, Darian Burns. I think she probably on the call or was on the call. And I ask questions. I ask questions about what these policies mean, what the experiences mean to people. Frequently a discussion that Darian and I have about framing and communications, for example, is a debate that we often, not a debate, a discussion that we often have is, I'm often focused on what will reach, what the research at least tells us will reach the greatest number of persuadables. But Darian will often remind me that, hey, we have a principled stance. We have that makes me sound like I don't know, but we have a group that we're representing with real lived experiences and real harms, and we don't want to leave that behind. We don't want to underrepresent that. And I think that the team, both at SPLC, at SEF, the diversity of experiences, people who've lived in the South, people who are Black or part of different racial and ethnic groups, they really help round out the decisions I make. And like you say, the moments I feel like I need to step up or need to step back. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that was really great. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Harry. I think Iman, did you have your hand raised earlier?
Hi, yes, I did have my hand raised. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Iman. My judge is only allowing me to leave for this meeting, so I can't turn my camera on right now. But I am really interested in hearing about all the work that you guys do. I think that it's super impactful and super valuable, especially Harry as a new attorney. So this question is for all three of you, but I mostly wanted to know more so about like any mistakes you've made, Harry, and kind of as his mentors, how you guys approach those mistakes. And Harry, as a new attorney, it's kind of hard to find confidence a lot of the time. So how did you navigate that situation?
I feel like I'm at my interview again. No, give you a moment. Fred, Mike, you want to offer up examples of mistakes I've made? And
I don't have any examples that I would offer, but I will say this is that I think the culture that we try to create is to recognize that as new lawyers and as experienced lawyers, you're going to make mistakes, and we not only sort of welcome mistakes in the sense of like growing opportunities, but I think the way that sometimes we get at the best strategies or get at the most creative solutions is when we have learning environments that welcome mistakes and build trust that allow for mistakes and build that system. And that is the type of supervisor mentor that I had when I was making mistakes. And I think that I try to provide for everyone that we supervise and lawyers, because I think that's how we get the best work, is when we're all, feeling like we can collaborate in a space that we can be creative and we can think about what's the best strategy, and understanding that, some of those ideas that we throw on the table may not be what we use, but they're a building sort of iterative process that allows us to get to sort of the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve. And that takes time, and a lot of places, a lot of legal organizations aren't going to give you the space or the time or the trust to do some of that. And those can be really uncomfortable environments to learn in, especially as a new lawyer. And I think that we definitely don't want that to be anyone's experience, and is why we sort of try to actively do something different, but also, you know, we're fortunate to have the resources that allow us to create environments that allow for that as well. And not every organization has that. And so, yeah, but Harry has done phenomenal work, and you know, I think that that's a credit to him, being willing to take risks and, you know, think about things from new perspectives or approach things from different angles. And Harry will come to me with new creative ideas around how we can approach issues. And it makes, and I learn a lot from him, because it really gets us thinking about things in new ways that, you know, I hadn't thought about before. So I think, yeah, but that's really the environment we want for the fellows. And I think that will allow the fellows to have, you know, the best experience possible.
And then just from my perspective at SEF, similar to what Mike said, we are a learning organization, meaning we always want the opportunity for everyone to have the opportunity to learn. I don't think we strive for perfection. We strive for improvement and taking risk. And I think that's really a part of hopefully the culture that we try to set, both like within my team, but also within the organization. We know perfectionism is just really a value of the majority culture. And so for us, like, we're trying to make sure that we are providing an opportunity for people to get to different experiences, to learn, to grow. We're a relatively flat organization too. And what I mean by flat is every person have the opportunity to present ideas, and so that they can be heard. Now, not everyone will be certainly acted upon, but there is an opportunity for people to vocalize how they think something can be improved and or done that maybe we haven't considered before. And so certainly Harry has been a part of that. I try to guide him and others on my team as much as possible. And I'm super open to feedback and constructive criticism. And so, I mean, we try to have just a welcoming learning culture, just overall. So I think people will find that they have a pretty good experience with us.
I'll just quickly add that, you know, on both ends, the number of, you know, scattershot policy and legal ideas I've sent flying out into the universe. But some of them have landed, you know, and I think some of them have taken us, many have not, but we do have coalitions and partnerships. And I mean, we're working with national organizations that advocate for truth in curriculums because of an idea I had one day about organizational standing, for example. So yeah, it is one. I echo what both Fred and Mike said. Not all of the ideas land, obviously. Most of them often don't, but they're all worth trying and exploring, and I think this fellowship gives us the room to do that.
Thank you so much.
Are there more questions? Comments? Okay. Well, if there isn't anything else, to get back some of your time, I will hopefully just try to express my desire once more that if you're at all remotely interested in this opportunity, please consider applying. Do apply. And if you do have any questions or concerns, please let us know. Our team can maybe drop again the email where you can send us questions into the chat once more. And also is on this the page now. So if you do have any questions, feel free to follow up with us. We do hope you will consider this opportunity. And again, we just want to thank you for spending some of your time with us and learning more about our organization and the fellowship. With that, we can come to a close. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.